Hello, rational thinkers. I am your strategic observer, Maggie Liu. What I am breaking down for you today is a classic comeback game case of extreme betrayal, asset deprivation, and high-dimensional power reconstruction. Let's take a look. I am the legitimate daughter married to Prince Jing, who currently holds supreme power in the court. After the grand wedding, I was bedridden with illness, and my concubine-born sister often came to the prince's manor to take care of me. When I was gravely ill, she and the prince engaged in an illicit affair in the study. I witnessed it with my own eyes, spat blood and died, my final sight being my concubine-born sister's provocative smile. Opening my eyes again, I returned to 15 years old, and my concubine-born sister was begging me to give her my chance to go on the spring outing. Sister is weak, so your younger sister will just go in your place. This time I smiled. Sure, it just so happens I have an appointment with the great general. She didn't know that after being reborn, I was no longer the me of the past. The surging blood in my chest, carrying a pungent rusty smell, burst violently through my throat. PFFT, a glaring stream of thick blood splashed onto the cold vermilion lacquered pillar, winding across the slippery stone steps. I collapsed convulsingly under the veranda, each breath feeling like countless rusty iron saws wildly tearing through my internal organs. The excruciating pain made every single bone in my body tremble, yet my eyes remained pinned dead onto the study's window, lattice not far away that shed warm light. Inside the room, a warm fragrance hung in the air, and their silhouettes overlapped, the heavy panting of passionate lovemaking mixed with the woman's intensely coquettish moans, penetrating the chilly night wind and piercing my eardrums. That was Lin Wangqing's voice, the concubine-born sister from the minister's manor whom I had treated like my own blood sister and meticulously cared for over so many years. And the man with his back to the window, tall and upright, who exuded disdain and coldness even while engaged in such a shameful act, was my husband, Prince Jing, Xiao Chengchen, who held supreme power over the court. Your Highness, sister is outside. What if she sees us? Lin Wangqing's coquettish voice didn't contain a trace of panic. Instead, it was filled with the pleasure of surrendering to lust. Xiao Chengchen sneered low and cold, his voice like a poisoned blade of ice. So what if she sees us? That sickly body of hers should have given up the spot of my princess long ago, if not for the secret military supply records left by her maternal family. Why would I have bothered to play nice and marry a useless person? A sudden surge of sweetness hit my throat again, and an even more violent gush of blood spurted out between my fingers. My body could no longer support itself, limply sliding down along the pillar as the icy stone tiles dug painfully into my bones. My vision began to black out, and just a moment before my consciousness completely sank into a bottomless abyss, those intertwined silhouettes turned around. Lin Wangqing poked her face out from behind the man's broad shoulder, facing directly toward the window. Moonlight and candle shadows outlined her flushed profile. Across a distance of over 10 meters, I clearly saw the look in her eyes, not shame, not panic, but naked, poison-dipped, completely unhidden triumph and provocation. She silently mouthed a few words at me. Sister, you lost. This scene became the final poison dagger that slashed open the soul of my past life. I racked my brains for Xiao Chengchen, painstakingly offering up the business properties left to me by my maternal grandfather with both hands. I ran around everywhere for Lin Wangqing, securing a high society reputation for her. Yet in the end, one viewed me as a stumbling block, and the other treated me as a stepping stone. Lin Wangqing, Xiao Chengchen. If there is a next life, I will make you wish you were dead, skin you alive and rip out your tendons. Amidst the excruciating pain of my internal organs shattering, boundless darkness swallowed me whole. Sister, why are you zoning out? Soft voice suddenly exploded in my ear, carrying a hint of her usual perfectly calculated coyness and probing. I snapped my eyes open. Blinding sunlight pierced right through the carved wooden window, making me subconsciously squint. Lingering at the tip of my nose was not the lingering bitter smell of medicine dregs from my past life's bedroom, nor the cold, bloody stench before my death, but the faint pepper fragrance unique to a young lady's boudoir. I turned my neck stiffly, And what caught my eye was the familiar green gauze bed curtain embroidered with lotuses. Beside the bed, Lin Wangqing was sitting on a stool. She wore a powder pink long dress, her hair piled high in an elegant bun, her makeup exquisite, and deep within those slightly shifting eyes hid a calculating gleam. I heard the peach blossoms on West Mountain are blooming just right, and several princes have agreed to go on a spring outing. They even sent invitations to various manors, inviting quite a few youths from noble families. She leaned closer and familiarly reached out to take my arm, her tone filled with heartfelt entreaty. Sister, didn't you say a few days ago that your body felt a bit tired lately and you were too lazy to move around? We have both reached the age to look for suitors and discuss marriage. For such a lively occasion, it wouldn't look good if our minister's manor missed out. Why don't I go in Sister's place to take a look for you? That way I can come back and tell Sister all about it. Familiar lines, familiar look. My heart beat violently against my ribs inside my chest, making a booming roar. Reborn. I actually returned to the year I turned 18, back to this exact moment when both of us sisters had reached adulthood. And Lin Wangqing tore off her hypocritical mask for the first time, trying to snatch the social dominance of the minister's manor's legitimate daughter from my hands. In my past life, it was right here that I softened my heart, just because of a few soft and gentle words from her. I thought she genuinely cared about my frail health, so I thoughtfully gave her the noble lady's invitation card sent from the palace, and even foolishly lent her the ruby headpiece set left by my mother to boost her image. In the end, she stunned everyone with a dance at Sishan, hooking up with Prince Jing Xiao Chengchen, while I was left with the bad reputation of being frail and sickly, unfit for grand occasions, and completely lacking the demeanor of a household's legitimate daughter. Sister, why aren't you speaking? Could it be that you can't bear to part with it? Seeing that I didn't respond for a long time, a flash of impatience flickered in Lin Wangqing's eyes, and the fingers holding my arms secretly tightened, her fingernails almost poking into my flesh. I lowered my eyelid, hiding the overwhelming hatred and icy murderous intent surging in my eyes. Slowly, bit by bit, I pulled my arm back. Lin Wangqing's hand clutched empty air, and the smile on her face stiffened slightly. Sister. Propping myself up against the pillow, I slowly sat up, looking down at her from above. You'll go in my place, little sister. I spoke, my voice gentle yet devoid of any warmth. Yes, sister. Lin Wangqing didn't notice anything unusual, and thought I had wavered, so she hastily piled on a smile. I am also doing this for the sake of our Lin Manor's reputation. Besides, sister is sick, impudent. A sharp shout abruptly tore apart the quiet of the boudoir. I raised my hand, threw all the strength in my body into it, and slammed it down heavily onto the celadon teacup on the table. Clatter, bang. The expensive GG Kiln celadon teacup shattered at the impact, splashing warm tea mixed with tea leaves all over Lin Wangqing. A large patch of her pale pink skirt was instantly soaked through, leaving her in utter embarrassment. Lin Wangqing shrieked in fright and bounced up from her stool, looking at me with a face full of disbelief. Sister, what are you doing? What did I do wrong for you to throw such a huge temper? Hearing the commotion, the maids and servant women waiting outside fell to their knees all at once. What did you do wrong? I stood up with a cold sneer and walked step by step right up to Lin Wangqing. I was half a head taller than her, looking down at her imperiously right now, my eyes as if looking at a filthy rat that had crawled into the inner chamber. Lin Wangqing, what nerve you have. My usual gentleness toward you has actually made you forget the rules of this minister's manor. My voice was not loud, yet every word was like iron landing with resounding force. The invitation sent by the imperial family invites the eldest legitimate daughter of the current Minister of Personnel. It is a spot granted by the palace according to rank and rules, as a concubine-born daughter who has now reached 18. Instead of knowing your place and preparing your dowry, how dare you repeatedly claim you will go look over the princes for me? Lin Wangqing's face instantly turned from red to white, and then from white to green. Distinction between legitimate and concubine. Born these 4 words had always been the sore spot in her heart that no one was allowed to touch. Ever since she was little, She studied and practiced writing desperately, tirelessly practicing the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, all just to wash away the lowly mark of being born to a concubine. Sister, how could you say that about me? Lin Wangqing's eyes turned red, tears dropping on cue as she put on a tottering, humiliated posture. I was merely caring for Sister's health. We are both 18-year-old adult women. Why must Sister use the words legitimate and concubine born to trample on my dignity? Dignity. It was as if I had heard the biggest joke in the world. I took a step forward, forcing her to step back. If you understood dignity, you wouldn't have bypassed the main mother and me, your legitimate elder sister, to secretly have Auntie Liu flatter the housekeeper to find out which princes would be attending the West Mountain banquet. If you understood dignity, you wouldn't have rummaged through the wardrobe and vanity cabinet in my room while I was sick, sneaking a look at the gemstone head ornaments left by my mother. Boom, as soon as these words were spoken, a suppressed commotion broke out among the little maidservants kneeling outside the door. Lin Wangqing's pupils shrank violently to the size of pinpoints. As if she had been struck by lightning, she could never have imagined that those secret schemes, which she thought had gone completely unnoticed, had long been uncovered by me inside out. You are talking nonsense. I didn't. Lin Wangqing waved her hands in panic, her voice trembling. Whether you did or not, you know best in your heart. I leaned close to her ear and spat out an icy to the bone warning in a voice only the two of us could hear. Lin Wangqing, put away those low-class little schemes of yours. In the past, I was soft-hearted and spoiled you until you didn't know the height of the sky or the depth of the earth. From now on, whenever you dare stretch out your claws to touch what is mine, I paused, my fingernails digging fiercely into her tender cheek until a bloody mark was pinched out. I'll chop off your claws one by one to feed the dogs. Immense fear poured over her like ice water, making Lin Wangqing tremble violently all over. The Lin Wanyin before her eyes, whose gaze was as dark and cold as a ferocious ghost from hell, completely shattered the image in her memory of a weak and easily bullied invalid. Get out. I spat out a single cold word, tossing her aside like throwing away trash. Lin Wangqing fell to the ground, clawing at the floor tiles in a pathetic state, extreme venom and horror bursting from her eyes. In the end, she didn't even dare to leave behind a single face-saving word, covering her face as she scrambled and crawled out of the boudoir. Watching her back as she fled in panic, I slowly walked over to the bronze mirror. The woman in the mirror had delicate features, was in her prime at 20, dignified and grand. Though she looked slightly sickly and pale, within those dark eyes burned a murderous, world-destroying fire. Lin Wangqing Xiao Chengchen, the despair you inflicted on me in my past life. In this life, I will turn it into the sharpest steel blade and hack it back to you 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold. Chun Tao walked in trembling from outside the door, handing over a handkerchief. Miss, today you are. Chun Tao. I took the handkerchief and wiped the tea stains off my fingertips, my tone returning to calm. Go get that agarwood-coloured gold thread cloud brocade riding outfit left by my mother and resize it. Chun Tao was startled. Miss, are you really going to Sishan? I turned around, looked out the window at the crystal blue sky, the corners of my lips curling slightly. Go, why wouldn't I go? On the back mountain of Sishan, there is a grand Buddha holding heavy military power at just 23 years old, waiting for me to deliver him. Sishan, the back mountain cliff. The March sunshine was bright to the point of being nearly blinding, and the peach blossoms all over the mountain burned as red as blood. The front mountain was a noisy royal banquet with nobles and high officials in fine robes and continuous laughter and chatter. Yet in this cliffside dense forest on the back mountain, rarely visited by humans all year round, there lingered a heavy, inescapable aura of battlefield slaughter. I took off the intricate gold hairpins, pearls and emeralds from my head, changed into that agarwood-coloured long dress of gold thread cloud brocade, and put up my long hair with only a plain, elegant jade hairpin, leaving the trembling maid Chun Tao at the back mountain entrance to wait as backup. I walked alone, stepping on pine needles and fallen blossoms all over the ground, taking step after step into this dead, silent, forbidden land. In the wind, there faintly came the explosive sound of wind and thunder as a sharp blade sliced through the air. Clang. An earth-shattering sword cry tore through the vast sky. I stopped under an old peach tree 100 paces away and looked up. On the open ground at the edge of the 100-jang cliff, a figure in a dark robe was shifting and flashing like a phantom. It was a young man with a tall, spear-straight posture, his tight dark outfit accentuating the sharp lines of his broad shoulders and narrow waist. In his hand he held a 3-foot-3-inch long heavy black iron sword, and as the blade light surged, the violent, murderous aura tempered on the battlefield surged like towering waves. As the sword wind swept past, the peach blossoms filling the tree were ground into fine dust, and within a radius of 10 jang, not a single fallen leaf could get close to him. The current imperial general guarding the north, Shen Ji, at just 23 years old, relying on his solid military merit and decisive, iron-blooded methods, he was appointed general and titled Marquis, commanding 300,000 troops of the Northern Army, becoming a god of slaughter dominating the northern frontier. In the previous life, he was aloof and cold by nature, refusing to submit to the solicitations of any prince in court, often not even giving face to the emperor. Xiao Changchen had set traps several times attempting to bring him under his command, but all were ruthlessly torn apart by him. In the end, Xiao Changchen colluded with the third prince to strike a deadly blow during the royal autumn hunt, using a poisoned arrow to ruin his right arm, leaving him to break his wings in resentment amid the court struggles. Looking at that cold figure raging among the falling blossoms, my heart beat violently despite myself. To cooperate with such a battlefield mad wolf who held heavy military power and was extremely guarded was no different from asking a tiger for its skin. The slightest carelessness would result in being smashed to pieces, but I had no choice. If I want to drag Xiao Chengchen down to hell, I must hold Shen Jie, the sharpest blade in the world, in my hand. Yes, I took a deep breath, suppressed the surge of hot blood running through my body, and slowly stepped forward. Stop. The instant my foot landed on that ruin-like flat ground, the sound of sword practice stopped abruptly. Without any warning, a dark afterimage so fast that the naked eye couldn't catch it at all, sliced through the air, and an extremely sharp howl burst out. Before I could even react, a sword blade, heavy as iron yet suffocatingly sharp, had already pressed firmly against the skin of my neck with a bone-chilling cold. My hair instantly stood on end, tiny beads of blood even seeped out on my skin. Shenju had appeared out of thin air just an inch in front of me before I even realized it. He stood looking down at me, his 23-year-old face sharp and stern as if carved by a blade, those pitch-black hawk-like eyes devoid of any human warmth, filled only with unmasked, bloodthirsty intent to kill that treated human life like trash. The legitimate daughter of Minister Lin, First Miss Lin. Shen Jie spoke, his voice raspy and deep, carrying heavy panting right after practicing swordplay, sounding just like a beast growling before unleashing its fury. The heavy sword in his hand pushed forward slightly by 0.5 millimeter, and fresh blood trickled slowly down my snow-white neck, staining my eaglewood-colored collar red, stalking this general to the back mountain cliff. Who sent you, Xiao Chengchen? Or the third prince, Xiao Chengru? A cruel and cold smirk hooked on the corner of Shenju's mouth. If you can't give a reason that satisfies this general, then under this cliff today there will be one more anonymous female corpse yours, hanging by a thread between life and death. If it were an ordinary boudoir lady, she would probably be scared out of her pants by now, screaming at the top of her lungs for mercy. However, I merely lowered my head slightly to glance at the cold blade against my neck, then slowly raised my eyes, meeting his grim, reaper-like gaze without a trace of fear. The corners of my lips slowly curled into an extremely strange, utterly insane smile. General Shen's sword truly lives up to its reputation. I spoke, my voice soft, without even a hint of trembling. Pity. It is a good sword, but I am afraid the arm holding it won't last more than 3 months. Shenju's brows furrowed sharply, killing intent surging deep within his hawk-like eyes. You are seeking death. The blade of the heavy sword pressed down once again. A sharp pain came as it sliced through my skin, but I didn't even blink an eye. Instead, I took 1/2 step forward, letting the sharp blade sink several fractions deeper into my flesh. I stared dead into his shocked eyes, every word like ice. General, your right arm's trouble with soreness, numbness, and severe pain on rainy days, leaving you unable to lift a 10,000 she heavy bow, has been going on for 2 years now. Hasn't it? The Imperial physicians said it was battlefield cold penetrating the bones, but you know full well in your heart that whenever you exert 70% of your internal power, the meridians at your right elbow feel like 10,000 needles pricking. Shenju's face twitched violently, his palm gripping the sword suddenly tightened, joints making a harsh cracking sound. This hidden illness was his greatest secret. In the army, apart from his closest vice lieutenant, absolutely no third person knew. How on earth did this 18-year-old legitimate daughter of the minister's manor, who never steps out of her house, come to know about it? Without giving him a chance to catch his breath, I continued to slam the bargaining chips from my past life hard against his heart. General, in your breast, aren't you still wearing a dark black silken pouch close to you to this day? Embroidered with cloud patterns in dark gold thread, with an unwashable old tea stain on the bottom right corner that is the sole keepsake your late wife left you on her deathbed. Enough! Shenju erupted into an earth-shattering roar. Violent, fierce wind burst out from all around his body, shaking the surrounding trees with a loud rumble. He suddenly stowed his heavy sword, his giant fan-like hand shooting out like an eagle's claw, tightly clamping onto my neck. Boom, he slammed my whole body heavily against the trunk of an old peach tree nearby. The rough bark scraped open my back, and the immense impact almost made me spit out a mouthful of blood. Shenju pressed up close, his whole body looming over me like an insurmountable mountain. His face was ferocious, fierce malice and rage surging in his eyes like roaring waves, and the fingers clamped around my throat kept tightening. Whose spy are you? Who gave you this information? Speak. If you don't speak, this general will crush your throat right now. A massive feeling of suffocation attacked wildly. My vision went dark in waves, and my lungs felt like they were going to burst. But looking at Shenju's completely out of control, ruthless face, I laughed out loud in my heart. He panicked. This unbearably arrogant king of hell of the battlefield was finally pressed right on his fatal spot by me. I struggled to raise my hands, digging my fingernails deep into the muscle on the back of his hand clasped around my throat. Using the last of my strength, I forced out a few words through my clenched teeth. General, did you think that silken pouch was out of longing? That was a poison the third prince set for you. 2 years ago, a colorless, odorless, marrow-severing powder. Boom. It was like being struck by 5 thunderbolts. Shenju's pupils violently contracted to the size of pinpoints. Marrow-severing powder, a slow-acting poison, the relic of his mother that he treasured so dearly and caressed every day, was actually the source poisoning his meridians. The shock brought by this secret was far more cruel than that sword strike just now. Shenju shuddered all over, and the large hand clamped around my neck suddenly let go as if shocked by electricity. Cough, cough, cough. I slumped down against the tree trunk onto the ground, gasping greedily for fresh air, my violent coughing sounding exceptionally harsh in the dead silent dense forest. Shenju stood frozen on the spot. He slowly reached into his robe and pulled out that dark silken pouch that had grown somewhat worn from being caressed so often. With trembling fingertips, he brought the silken pouch up to his nose, then tore open a hidden corner's seam and pinched the lining. That faintly blackened silk cotton emitted a faint, sickly sweet scent upon contact with the air. It really was marrow-severing powder. This tough guy, who had never backed down even half a step on the battlefield facing 100,000 enemy troops, was now pale as paper, his body swaying slightly. After a long while, Shenju turned around slowly, looking down condescendingly at me as I sprawled on the ground coughing. The rage and ferocity in his eyes receded, replaced by an extremely dangerous and complex scrutiny. 3 months from now, the Royal Autumn Hunt, what will happen? Shenju's voice was raspy, like 2 stones rubbing together. I wiped away the blood from the corner of my mouth, propping myself against the tree trunk as I slowly stood up straight. Although my face was pale and my neck bleeding, I straightened my spine. My 18-year-old dignified appearance set off by the blood, displaying a heart-palpitating, eerie charm and nobility. 3 months from now, at the royal hunting grounds, The third prince will take advantage of the window when your right arm is in severe pain, arrange death squads to draw away your personal guards, and assassinate you with a poison-tipped hidden arrow. I looked at him, every word crystal clear. That arrow won't take your life, but it will completely ruin your right arm, leaving you a useless cripple who can never lift a blade again. And after that, they will forge letters showing you colluded with the Xiongnu, pinning the blame for the collapse of the northern frontier defense line entirely on your Shen family to have your whole clan executed. Clack! The tip of the heavy sword in Shen Ju's hand sank deeply into the rock beneath. The dense forest fell into a dead silence. Only the rustling of the wind blowing through the leaves remained. Shen Ji stared at me as if trying to look through my skin and see right through this reborn soul of mine. Lin Wanyin, he spoke slowly, his tone returning to its usual coldness and severity. You are 18 this year, nothing more than a woman confined to the inner chambers. How did you come to know secrets from the highest levels of the imperial court? You risked having your throat slit by my sword to come find me. So what on earth are you seeking? What am I seeking? I looked up at this future pillar of the nation, revealing the most reckless and icy smile since my rebirth. I do not ask for the general's protection, nor do I ask for the general's pity. I took a step forward, voluntarily walking within the attack range of his sharp, heavy sword, my eyes locking onto him like a hawk's. I want to borrow the general's 300,000 djembe armored cavalry. I want to borrow the general's matchless steel blade, to come with me, and slaughter every last one of those high and mighty jackals and tigers who treat human lives like grass. If Xiao Changchen wants a reputation, I'll ruin him completely. If the third prince wants military power, I'll break his hands and feet. If Lin Wangqing wants to marry into a high family, I'll make her the top prostitute among 10,000. The woman's voice was crisp and ringing, yet it carried a ruthless determination capable of shaking the mountains and rivers. Shen Ju stared fixedly at me. In this woman's eyes, he saw no greed, no desire, only an endless, roaring fire of revenge capable of burning the heavens and boiling the seas. That was an aura of someone of his own kind, the resonance between hunter and hunter. Shen Ju suddenly threw his head back and laughed out loud. His laughter shook the tree full of peach blossoms, sending them rustling down. His laughter stopped abruptly. He drew out his heavy sword, then neatly slid it back into the scabbard on his back. Afterwards, this insufferably arrogant General Zhenbei clasped his fists slightly toward me and bowed deeply. Eldest Miss Lin informed me out of righteousness, and I, Shen, will keep it firmly in mind. From now on, eldest Miss Lin's enemies are the mortal enemies of my Zhenbei army. Listening to his promise, my heart, which had been hanging in my throat, finally settled. The first move of the chess game was a success. However, before I could pull my thoughts back, a flurry of hurried, light footsteps suddenly came from the path outside the dense forest on the back mountain, accompanied by the delicate weeping of a woman and the angry shouting of a man. Your Highness, slow down. Little sister is also worried about sister's safety. Humph, Lin Wanyin is acting completely outrageous. To actually run to the back mountain's dense forest all by herself. If some illicit affair really occurred, where would the minister's manners dignity be? This prince will definitely not spare her. It was Lin Wangqing's voice, and Xiao Chengchen. A glint of bloodlust flashed in my eyes. That bitch Lin Wangqing, unwilling to accept it after being taught a lesson by me in the boudoir just now, actually turned around, went to the front mountain to hook up with Xiao Chengchen, and even brought a crowd of noble young lords to run to the back mountain under the banner of looking for the missing legitimate daughter to catch an affair in the act. She is trying to completely ruin my innocent reputation. First Miss Lin, Shen Ju, had clearly heard the commotion outside as well. His hawk-like eyes darkened and his hand pressed on the sword hilt once again. His tone grim. Does this general need to go and clear out this swarm of buzzing flies? Clear them out? No, where is the fun in that? I turned around, tidied up my slightly disheveled clothes, casually wiped away the blood on my neck and curled my lips into a smile at Shen Ju, General Shen, since my good sister has already set up the stage. Why not come with me to the front mountain to watch a good show? Shen Ju froze for a moment, and then a cruel yet casual smirk curved at the corner of his lips. It is exactly what I desire, though I dared not ask. At the end of the trail on the back mountain, the sound of footsteps was chaotic and hurried. Lin Wangqing walked at the very front, holding up her floor-length skirt, her hair slightly messy, with tears quivering at the corners of her eyes ready to drop, looking anxious yet extremely thoughtful. "Your Highness, please slow down. Sister threw a temper in her boudoir just now, and I was afraid she might act rashly and run into this desolate wilderness, meeting with an accident. If she really encounters any villains, what will become of the minister's manor?" Behind her stood Prince Zheng Xiao Chengchen, wearing a flying eagle purple and gold robe. Xiao Chengchen's face was dark with rage as he stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes filled with impatience and disgust. This prince thinks she has gone mad, making a scene in public and now sneaking off alone into the forbidden area of the back mountain. The upbringing of the minister's manor is truly getting worse year by year. Behind the two of them, 4 or 5 noble youths, ladies and socialites who had been unintentionally led there by Lin Wangqing followed along. On the surface, these people put on a show of concern, but their eyes shimmered with excited eagerness to watch the drama unfold. In this social circle, if the legitimate daughter of the minister's manor were to be slapped with the charge of losing her chastity in a wild, desolate mountain alone with a man, it would truly be a massive scandal that would shake the capital city. "It is right ahead. Your Highness, look, there is a figure over there." Lin Wangqing pointed into the depths of the peach blossom grove ahead, an uncontrollable flash of wild joy and malice gleaming in her eyes. Just now in her boudoir, she had been slapped and warned by that bitch, making her gnash her teeth in pure hatred. Having managed with great difficulty to find out that Lin Wanyin had gone to the back mountain alone, she immediately ran to cry and complain to Xiao Chengqian, while enticing this group of high-ranking nobles along to watch the show. She wanted the whole world to see just what kind of shameless slut that high and mighty legitimate elder sister of hers truly was. "Lin Wanyin," Yi Xiao Chengqian shouted sternly in rage, stepping out of the peach blossom grove in one stride. However, as the scene before his eyes clearly unfolded, his unfinished curses were abruptly choked off as if by a giant invisible hand, stuck dead in his throat, right in the center of the shattered peach grove ruins, where jagged rocks pierced the sky. I stood in the wind wearing an agarwood-colored satin dress, my black hair loosely pinned up with only a plain hairpin. Although a striking trickle of blood oozed from my neck, my posture was straight and upright, my face showing not a trace of panic, bearing instead a condescending icy majesty. And half a step behind me, Shen Jie, General Zhenbei of the court, was standing there quietly. His figure was like an insurmountable iron tower, his hand resting on the hilt of the giant black iron-heavy sword on his back, and those pitch-black hawk eyes, forged through slaughtering out of piles of bodies, were slowly sweeping over everyone present with an icy glare as if looking at dead men. In an instant, the air across the entire back mountain seemed to freeze into ice. The faces of several noble youths who had tagged along to watch the show turned pale with fright in an instant, their knees going weak, nearly dropping directly to their knees. That was Shen Ji, the fiercest, most untouchable god of slaughter in the capital city, General. General Shen, Xiao Chengchen's eyelids twitched violently, and the hands he held behind his back unconsciously clenched into fists. He had calculated everything, but the only thing he didn't expect was that the person Lin Wanyin was meeting was actually Shen Ji. How could this troublemaker, who didn't even give face to the emperor, be together with a young lady from the minister's manor? Lin Wangqing was completely stunned on the spot, the triumph in her eyes instantly freezing into terror. "Your Highness brought so many people aggressively storming into this forbidden area of the back mountain, repeatedly claiming that I have lost face." I slowly took half a step forward, breaking the suffocating silence with a cold sneer. "I wonder what face Your Highness is referring to. Or is it that, in Your Highness's eyes, my assisting General Zhenbei, in checking the security of the royal banquet and eliminating the remnant assassins, has instead become a shameful, illicit affair?" Xiao Chengchen's expression shifted. "Assassins? What assassins? If Your Highness doesn't believe it, feel free to ask General Shen." I turned my body sideways, looking calm and composed. Shen Ju narrowed his hawk-like eyes slightly and gave a cold snort in full cooperation. That cold snort struck everyone's chest like a heavy hammer. He took a step forward, his burly frame exuding a suffocating pressure. This general was conducting a routine patrol in the back mountain, happened to meet eldest Miss Lin when she spotted traces of a thief, and called out a warning. Had eldest Miss Lin not stayed calm in the face of danger, the assassin who escaped just now would have disturbed the royal banquet at the front mountain. From what Prince Jing implies, this general and eldest Miss Lin discussing military matters and hunting down criminals in the back mountain has turned into some shameful, dirty affair in your eyes. As he spoke the last 4 words, Shenju slammed his palm hard against his heavy sword. Hum! The heavy hum of the sword exploded like wild thunder, shaking the surrounding leaves into a loud rustle. The few noble disciples in the back were terrified to the point of shaking like chaff, dropping to their knees all over the place with thuds. General, calm your anger, Your Highness Prince Jing, calm your anger. We were just passing by. We definitely had no such intention. Xiao Changchen's face turned green and pale by turns. He glared intently at me, then looked at the cold-faced Shen Jue. Even if he were killed, he would never have imagined that Shen Jue, who was always aloof and stood apart from the crowd, would actually open his mouth to endorse Lin Wanyin. But under the eyes of everyone, if he admitted he was here to catch an affair, not only would he offend Shen Ju, but he would also appear narrow-minded and gullible to slander. Xiao Chengchen took a deep breath, forcefully suppressed the fury in his heart and turned his head, piercing his cold gaze toward Lin Wangqing, who was standing dazed beside him. Lin Wangqing. Xiao Chengchen's voice was so low it sounded as if he were coughing up blood. This is what you called my sister might have done something foolish and met with an accident. This is the urgent matter you begged this prince to bring people to rescue her for. And it's not like that. Your Highness, I clearly, Lin Wangqing was in such a panic that she was incoherent, trembling all over as if about to collapse, her face as pale as paper. She couldn't figure it out. She had clearly watched Lin Wanyin go into the mountain all by herself. So why did Shen Ju suddenly pop up? Why did they coordinate their stories to say there was some assassin? Little sister. I walked slowly up to Lin Wangqing, looking down condescendingly at this trembling woman, reaching out to pinch her tear-stained chin. I spoke clearly in a voice everyone present could hear. I know that today in the boudoir I reprimanded you about rules, teaching you, a concubine-born daughter, that you shouldn't overstep your bounds and secretly covet invitations to the royal banquet, making you harbor resentment. But I didn't expect your mind to be vicious to such an extent. My fingertips exerted a little pressure, pinching her skin until it turned white. To get revenge on me, you actually ran to Prince Jing to stir up trouble, bringing a large group of outside men to barge into the deep forest behind the mountain, desperately trying to splash the dirty water of having an affair with outside men onto your own elder sister. These words were like completely tearing away the very last fig leaf on Lin Wangqing to shreds. The dignitaries behind her immediately burst into suppressed whispers. Oh my God, so that is what happened. It is actually a concubine's daughter holding a grudge over her legitimate elder sister disciplining her. How vicious, bringing so many outside men to catch an affair. She is trying to force her own sister to death. Is a concubine-born daughter of the minister's manor really this unpresentable? She is resorting to any means just to climb up. The harsh whispers felt like slap after slap landing heavily on Lin Wangqing's face. What she cared about most was her status, and what she feared most was others calling her an unpresentable concubine's daughter. But right now, the gentle and virtuous image she had painstakingly cultivated for years completely collapsed and shattered to pieces across the high society of the capital city. I didn't, sister. You are spouting venomous slander, Your Highness, save me. I did it because I care about sister. Lin Wangqing broke down crying hysterically, subconsciously reaching out to grab Xiao Chen's sleeve. However, right now, Xiao Chengchen wished he could stay 100,000 miles away from this idiot's slap. A loud slap echoed through the mountain forest. Without a shred of mercy, Xiao Chengchen slapped Lin Wangqing so hard she fell to the ground. His eyes were full of disgust and rage. Fool! You nearly made this prince misunderstand eldest Miss Lin and General Shen. The family reputation of the minister's manor has truly been completely ruined by a wretched creature born of a lowly servant like you." Lin Wangqing's face was swollen on one side from the hit. She lay on the floor clutching her face, completely limp all over, with even her sobs stuck in her throat. She looked up at Xiao Chengchen, seeing only cold, ruthless disgust. She turned her head to look at me, only to see the smirk at the corner of my mouth, a grim reaper-like mockery. At that moment, she finally understood what true despair felt like. "Prince Jing," I straightened my sleeves and looked at Xiao Chengchen, expressionlessly. "My younger sister has been poorly disciplined, disturbing your highness and General Shen. As for today's matter, I will personally report it to my father and handle it according to family rules. There is no need for your highness to trouble yourself." Xiao Chengchen's lips twitched, and he forced out an ugly smile. "Miss Lin exaggerates. Since it was all a misunderstanding, this prince won't bother the two of you with your safety check. Farewell." With that, he didn't even bother to glance at Lin Wangqing on the ground again. He flicked his sleeves and turned to leave with an ashen face. The noble onlookers also scrambled after him as if avoiding the plague. In the blink of an eye, the noisy peach grove returned to silence once again. Lin Wangqing lay on the ground like a dead dog, trembling all over, her eyes filled with endless hatred and fear. I walked up to her, raised my foot, and stepped on her tender fingers with my delicate embroidered shoe, grinding down slightly. "Ah!" Lin Wangqing let out a blood-curdling scream. "Can't even handle this." I bent down, pressing close to her ear, my voice as soft as a ghost giving birth. "Lin Wangqing, this is just the beginning. The pain you gave me in my past life. I'll pay you back bit by bit, flaying your skin and pulling out your sinews." Lifting my foot, I didn't even bother to look at her again. "Scram back and don't dirty General Shen's territory." Lin Wangqing scrambled and crawled her way down the mountain, looking 1,000 times more wretched than when she came. Watching her fleeing back, Shen Ju walked forward slowly from behind, arms crossed with a playful sneer hanging at the corner of his lips. First, Miss Lin's heart-killing tactics are 3 times sharper than this general's blade on the battlefield. I withdrew my gaze, turned to look at Shen Jie, my expression cold and solemn. "General Shen Jess, now that the trash on the back mountain has been cleared out, next we should talk about how we'll present Xiao Chengqin and the third prince with a generous gift at the Royal Autumn Hunt 3 months from now." Shen Ji's eagle eyes lit up, his murderous aura surging violently. "I am all ears." The night wind in February was as cold as a knife. Inside the main hall of the minister's manor, lights burned brightly. "Master, you must get justice for Wang Qing." Aunt Liu knelt on the ice-cold floor tiles, weeping pitifully with her hairpins trembling messily. Beside her, half of Lin Wangqing's face was swollen high, with a streak of blood at the corner of her mouth. She curled up in Aunt Liu's arms, trembling violently, her eyes filled with malice and terror. Minister Lin Qingyuan sat upright in the grand armchair, his face so gloomy it looked like it was about to drip water. He had just returned from the royal banquet on the front mountain when he heard the scandal spreading like wildfire in the capital city's aristocratic circles. His concubine-born daughter had brought a group of outside men to the back mountain to catch an affair in the act, only to end up catching General Zhenbei. Shen Ji, not only did she utterly humiliate the minister's residence, but she also almost enraged that god of slaughter. "You bastard." Lin Qingyuan slammed his palm onto the tea table, shattering the porcelain cup to pieces. "Who gave you the nerve to mess with Shen Ji? And is Wan Yin really mixed up with Shen Ji in the back mountain? Master, please see the truth." A flash of malice glinted in Aunt Liu's eyes as she hurriedly kowtowed and said, Wang Qing was indeed reckless, but she was only caring about her sister. Wan Yin is an unmarried young lady, yet she didn't come home in the middle of the night, and instead secretly met with General Shen, who commands heavy troops. In the back mountain, she even spoke up for General Shen. "Master, who in the court doesn't know that Shen Ju is a solitary minister? His Highness Prince Jing and the third prince are doing everything they can to marginalize him. If Wan Yin really gets involved with Shen Jue, isn't that pushing our minister's residence into a pit of fire?" These words struck right at Lin Qingyuan's fatal weakness. Lin Qingyuan was an extremely selfish and shrewd bureaucrat. The reason he tacitly allowed Lin Wangqing to get close to Xiao Chengchen was that he wanted to climb up by riding Prince Jing's ship. If he offended Prince Jing and the third prince's faction because of Lin Wanyin, or was even slapped with the charge of colluding with warlords, his official career would be completely ruined. Guards. A streak of ruthlessness flashed in Lin Qingyuan's eyes. Go drag that rebellious daughter over to me. I will personally enforce the family rules. No need to drag me. Father. A voice as cold as ice suddenly exploded from outside the door, piercing through the night. Bang, the heavy mahogany doors of the main hall were kicked open with tremendous force. A violent night wind swept sand and stones into the hall, blowing the candlelight so hard that it suddenly dimmed. Dressed in an eaglewood-coloured battle robe unwashed from travel dust, the bloodstain on my neck had already congealed into a dark red scab. Behind me followed 8 burly estate guards holding staves, stepping with heavy iron-like strides as they aggressively marched into the main hall. Lin Wanyin, how dare you? Seeing my entrance, Lin Qingyuan slammed the table and stood up in anger. Barging into the main hall with guards, do you still have me, your father, in your eyes? Do you still care about the rules of the minister's residence? Rules. I walked straight into the center of the hall, without even looking at the mother and daughter kneeling on the floor, and sneered, Father wants to talk rules with me. Then your daughter would like to ask Father, what kind of rule allows a concubine-born daughter of a lowly concubine to swindle people on the front mountain under the name of the minister's manor, and bring an outside man to ruin her legitimate elder sister's purity? You are spouting slander, Lin Wangqing shrieked. It was clearly you engaging in a shameful affair with General Shen on the back mountain, and you are biting back after I caught you red-handed. A shameful affair. I turned around abruptly, staring down intensely at Lin Wangqing, the terrifying murderous intent bursting from my eyes, forcing her to swallow the rest of her words right back down. I pulled out a heavy ledger and several letters from my robes and slammed them hard down at Lin Qingyuan's feet, smashing down so hard that dust scattered everywhere. Father, take a good look. This is the fine concubine you've doted on for 10 years, and this is the fine concubine-born daughter you treasure like the apple of your eye. Lin Qingyuan frowned, suppressed his anger, and picked up the letters and ledger from the ground. However, after reading just 3 lines, his face turned from green to white, and then from white to a dead like ghastly grey. Dense beads of cold sweat even seeped out on his forehead. This is impossible. Lin Qingyuan's hands trembled violently, the letter paper rustling and crackling in his grip. Master? What is wrong, Master? Aunt Liu's heart sank suddenly, an ominous feeling welling up inside her. I sneered and read the contents of the letter out loud for Lin Qingyuan. In the 3rd year of Chen Yuan, Lady Liu used 30,000 taels of silver from the minister's estate's private treasury to secretly fund the Anqiang Tower built on the sly by the 3rd prince. In the 4th year of Chen Yuan, Lady Liu, under the name of the minister's estate, smuggled contraband salt and iron in the northern frontier, with 70% of the profits ending up in the pocket of Prince Jing, Xiao Chengchen. As for last month, Lady Liu even secretly forged Father's official seal, secretly detaining the 3,000 warhorses, grain, and fodder allocated by the Ministry of War for the Zhenbei army, intending to frame General Shen. Boom, every word, every sentence, exploded in the main hall like heavy artillery. Lin Qingyuan looked as if his bones had been pulled out, collapsing heavily onto the Grandmaster chair. Colluding with a prince to secretly raise troops, detaining military rations in open rebellion. If any single one of these charges were brought to light, it would be a monstrous crime punishable by wiping out 9 generations and executing the entire household. You are talking nonsense. You are slandering me. This is a frame-up. Aunt Liu lost her composure completely, scrambling forward like crazy, trying to snatch those account books. I raised my foot and stomped hard on the back of her hand without mercy. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking, accompanied by Aunt Liu's blood-curdling scream, echoed through the night sky framed. I stared coldly down at the wailing shrew beneath my feet. The account books bear your Liu family's personal seal, and the letters carry the personal signature of your elder brother. the current director of the Ministry of War's Arsenal Bureau. As for the forged official seal, half an hour ago I had already sent men to search and retrieve it from the secret room inside the Buddhist shrine in your backyard. Lin Qingyuan snapped his head up, his eyes bloodshot as he glared fixedly at concubine Liu, spitting out a viper-like hiss from between his teeth. Bitch, you actually went behind my back and did something that could get our whole family executed. Although he wanted to curry favor with the princes, he only wanted to be a good official who did convenient favors, and never dared to get involved in a treasonous smuggled salt case that could cost him his head. Concubine Liu was tying the entire minister's residence to the darkest war chariot of the third prince and Prince Jing. Master, save me. I did it for the future of our minister's residence. Ignoring the severe pain in her hands, concubine Liu scrambled on all fours to hug Lin Qingyuan's legs. His Highness Prince Jing said that as long as we accomplish this, once the third prince ascends the throne, you will be the Prime Minister. Prime Minister. I threw my head back and laughed wildly, my laughter filled with desolation and mockery. Father, you are being so foolish. The third prince and Xiao Chengchen are using our minister's manor as a tool. If something goes wrong, the crimes of illegal salt and iron trade and withholding military rations will fall entirely on our Lin family. When the time comes for our whole family to be executed, the two of them will just pat their asses and walk away. Who would protect a mere minister like you? Lin Qingyuan gasped, cold sweat instantly soaking his back. He was an extremely intelligent man. Greed had blinded his eyes just now, but now that I pointed out the stakes, he was instantly scared out of his wits. Then, in your opinion, what should we do? Lin Qingyuan's voice trembled, subconsciously seeking a strategy from me, his 18-year-old daughter. At this moment, the dominance over the main hall fell completely into my hands. I slowly withdrew my foot from stepping on Auntie Liu's hand, looking down imperiously at the mother and daughter collapsed on the ground, their faces pale as death, and spoke coldly. First, block the news immediately. Secretly hand over the evidence of Auntie Liu's brother forging official seals and withholding military rations to General Shen Ji. General Shen owes me a favor now. With him keeping things under control at the northern frontier, the third prince won't dare to act recklessly, and the minister's manor can be kept safe. Second, I paused, my tone turning extremely chilling. Madame Liu has betrayed the family, a crime punishable by death. Out of consideration for her years of accompanying father, spare her the death penalty. Strip her of her authority over the inner household. Strip away her status. Demote her to a lowly slave, give her 50 strokes of the staff, and banish her immediately to the dirtiest and hardest farm in the capital's suburbs to shovel manure as hard labor, never to enter the capital again for all eternity. As for Lin Wangqing, my gaze fell upon Lin Wangqing, who was already scared out of her wits. As a concubine's daughter, showing no repentance, sowing discord and betraying the family. As of today, she is confined to the side courtyard, all maidservants and servants removed, and she must copy the commandments for women 100 times a day. Without my permission, if she dares step half a pace out of the side courtyard, break both her legs. No, don't, father. I am your most beloved Wangqing. Lin Wangqing broke down in tears and threw herself toward Lin Qingyuan. Get lost, you low-born spawn of a bitch. At this point, to save his official post and his life, how could Lin Qingyuan care about any father-daughter affection? He kicked Lin Wangqing flying with a heavy foot. Afterward, Lin Qingyuan wiped a handful of cold sweat from his forehead, looking at me decisive, ruthless, and flawlessly calculating. A flash of deep fear and reliance passed through his eyes. He said tremblingly, just do as Wan Yin says. From this day forth, all affairs big and small in the inner household of the minister's manor, along with the seals of the private treasury, are to be decided solely by the legitimate daughter Lin Wan Yin. Anyone who dares to object will be dealt with as a traitor. The official seal has fallen into my hands. Guards! I called out crisply. The 8 burly guards behind me pounced forward like wolves and tigers, grabbing concubine Liu and Lin Wangqing by the hair like dragging dead dogs, dragging them straight outside. Lin Wan Yin, you lunatic, you won't die a good death. Even as a ghost, I won't let you off. Concubine Liu screamed shrilly as the thick, Hard execution staffs were already striking down fiercely on the open ground outside the main hall. Thrack, thrack, the sound of crushing flesh and bones intertwined with shrill wails into a bloody movement in the night sky. I stood at the entrance of the main hall with my hands behind my back, letting the cold night wind blow against my sleeves. Listening to the screams one after another in the courtyard, the corners of my mouth slowly curled into an extremely cold arc. In my past life, concubine Liu used this exact vicious scheme to murder my mother, snatch the household power, and ultimately send me onto Xiao Chengchen's antidote table. And in this life, in just one night, I have utterly trampled her into the abyss of eternal damnation. Step 1, clear out the inner household and take full control. Step 2, Xiao Chengchen's financial sources and wings. I looked up at the deep night sky, a cold gleam suddenly flashing in my eyes. Xiao Chengchen, third prince, the nightmares you gave me I am sending back to you one by one, doubled. Next, it is your turn. The third watch of the night, heavy rain poured down. 30 li outside the capital, Ghost Sorrow Gorge. The steep cliffs were like two giant axes thrusting straight into the clouds, and the heavy rain washed the muddy mountain path slick as grease. Lightning occasionally sliced through the pitch-black night sky, illuminating the wildly swaying tree shadows in the gorge like ferocious ghosts bearing claws and fangs. Rumble, a burst of heavy, thunderous wheel sounds, mixed in with the howling wind and torrential rain, rapidly approached from the gorge entrance. Those were a full 20 heavy carriages covered in black tarpaulin. The wheels of every carriage sank deep into the mud, making a teeth-grinding creak, clearly loaded with extremely heavy, massive cargo. Around the convoy, a full 200 death warriors wearing black cloaks with sinister scimitars at their waists silently escorted on horseback. Their breathing was long and steady, their eyes dead quiet, and their bodies gave off a thick, bloody stench that could only come from crawling out of a pile of corpses. The lead saber master pulled down his hood, spat, and shouted fiercely, "All of you keep your damn skins tight. These 20 carts of goods are His Highness's lifeblood planned for 3 whole years. They must be delivered to the West Mountain camp before daybreak tomorrow. If there is even the slightest slip-up, executing 9 generations won't even be enough heads to chop. Rest assured, sir. This Ghost Sorrow secret passage is extremely hidden, plus with the heavy rain, even ghosts wouldn't bang." Before the words even landed, a piercing, air-tearing roar erupted without warning from the cliff above. A giant dark iron anchor, as thick as a thigh, dragged heavy iron chains and crashed down like a meteorite from the 100-jang cliff. Boom! The giant anchor with absolute precision smashed onto the roof of the first carriage. Wood splinters flew, black cloth tore apart, and dozens of heavy boxes of oil paper packages were smashed to pieces. In an instant, countless fine salt particles, as white as silver crystals, mixed with the freezing rain and splashed all over the ground and hidden within the layers of salt packages. Stacks of cold, gleaming, refined steel armor and finely crafted repeating crossbows were shockingly exposed. Enemy attack, ambush, protect the cargo. The leading swordsman's eyes flared with rage as he roared fiercely, pulling out the scimitar at his waist. However, his shouts were instantly drowned out by a sky-blotting rain of arrows. Swish, swish, swish. On the high cliffs on both sides of the canyon, hundreds of armor-piercing heavy arrows poured down like a swarm of locusts. Every arrow drew blood, each capable of piercing through the heavy armor of the die-hard guards. Screams of terror, the wailing of horses, and the squelching sound of iron-penetrating flesh instantly wove together into a hell on earth. Where did these thieves come from? How dare you rob His Highness Prince Jing's goods? You are looking for death. Brandishing his scimitar seamlessly to deflect incoming arrows, the saber master roared furiously toward the cliff. Prince Jing's silver Xiao Chengchen is precisely the one we're robbing. A clear, icy female voice actually pierced straight through the torrential storm, exploding above the canyon. The leader of the death squad suddenly raised his head. The instant lightning flashed across the night sky. He clearly saw 2 people standing on the cliff. On the left, Shen Jue, the current general suppressing the north, held an 18-foot black iron heavy spear, his cloak snapping in the wild wind like a god of slaughter descending to earth, and beside Shen Ju stood a woman clad in pitch-black night garb, Her black hair was tied high, and her coldly glamorous face bore no expression, save for those pitch-black eyes that revealed a dead, icy chill seeing through everything. Lin Wanyin, it is you. The leader of the death squad glared wide-eyed, his face full of disbelief. A weak girl from the minister's manor. How could you know about this secret passage? How could you know the delivery time? Looking down from above at these death squad warriors in their death throes, the corner of my mouth curled into a bloodthirsty sneer. How could I know? In my past life, Xiao Chengchen used the endless wealth exchanged from this batch of illicit salt, along with these 5,000 sets of fine steel private army gear, to stage a rebellion during the autumn hunt 3 years later, storming the palace to commit patricide. And in this life, from the moment I got that secret ledger in Lady Liu's Buddhist hall, all of Xiao Chengchen's secret strongholds and transport routes in the capital's outskirts were already a stripped, naked blank sheet of paper in my eyes. General Shen, I turned my head, my voice so calm it lacked a single trace of warmth. Leave none alive, end it quickly. Shen Jui's lips curled into a cruel grin, a bloodthirsty light bursting from his eyes. As you command. Boom, Shen Jui's tall body leapt straight down from the cliffed hens of Shanghai like a meteorite. His heavy spear sliced a half-moon blood-red arc through the air. Bang, the leader of the death squad along with the warhorse beneath him was smashed in two through the air the moment they touched the spear light. Blood mixed with internal organs sprayed into the freezing rain. The Zhenbei army personal guards ambushing all around pounced out from the dark like a pack of hungry wolves. This was a one-sided slaughter. The 200 death squad warriors that Xiao Chengchen poured all his heart into training were indeed formidable. But in front of a regular Borderlands field army like the Zhenbei army who had truly bathed in blood on the battlefield and accumulated illustrious combat merits, they were as fragile as a flock of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. In less than half a quarter hour, the battle was declared over. Inside the canyon, aside from the rushing sound of torrential rain washing away bloodstains, there was no longer a single groan from any living soul. Dozens of oil paper packages were chopped open, hiding inside not only hundreds of thousands of tales of refined official salt and over 1,000 banned weapons, but also 30 whole trunks of heavy gold. Shen Ju pried open one of the iron-clad chests with the tip of his spear, and looking at that glittering golden light, he raised an eyebrow and smiled. A full 500,000 taels of silver plus 100,000 taels of pure gold. Xiao Chengchen has managed to amass quite a massive fortune over these past few years by relying on the Liu family in the Ministry of War to traffic people, salt and iron. First, Miss Lin's move to pull the rug out from under him is probably going to gouge a raw chunk of flesh right off Xiao Chengchen. Stepping through mud and blood, I walked slowly over to the chest, reached out to grab a handful of icy gold, and let it slip through my fingers. In my past life, it was the troop sport with this very gold that trampled the entire Lin family. All this silver, gold, and weaponry, I turned to look at Shenju. Transport every last bit back to your northern subjugation army camp. With these supplies, your 30,000 troops in the northern frontier can be outfitted with the finest equipment of the great Ming dynasty. Shenju's hawk-like eyes narrowed slightly, and he gave me a deep look. This was 500,000 taels of silver. Even imperial relatives would go crazy with envy upon seeing it, yet the woman in front of him didn't even blink an eye, giving it all to him. Eldest Miss Lin is generous indeed. Shenju withdrew his heavy spear and said in a deep voice, "But taking such a big cut from you for free doesn't feel right to this general. Speak up, what do you want this general to do for you?" I wiped away a drop of blood from a death squad assassin that had splashed onto my cheek, a cold gleam flaring in my eyes. "I want you to load the corpses of all 200 death squad assassins onto ox carts. Tonight before dawn, pile them all right at the main gate of the Prince Jing Manor." Shenju was stunned for a moment upon hearing this, then immediately erupted into wild laughter. "Ha ha, good. What a way to kill them and crush their spirits. This general will send people to handle it right away." Early morning, just as the day was breaking. In front of the Prince Jing Manor, the rain had cleared, and the sky was bright. Early rising commoners heading to the market streamed onto the streets one after another. However, when the first batch of commoners reached the entrance of the Prince Jing Manor, They were terrified by the horrific scene before their eyes and scattered screaming. In front of the tall vermilion gatehouse of the Prince Jing Manor, there was strikingly stacked a small mountain built from 200 black-clad corpses. On the forehead of every single corpse, a big character poster was pinned tightly with a dagger prominently displaying 4 blood-red characters, country-stealing traitor. And at the very top of the pile of corpses hung the head of the death squad leader, his eyes wide in unpeaceful death. Stuffed forcibly inside the head's mouth was a roll of tax receipts for illicit salt. Bang! The main gate of the Prince Jing Manor was shoved open violently from inside. Xiao Chengchen, dressed in full court robes and about to attend morning court, felt as if he had been struck by lightning when he saw that bloody mountain of corpses in front of the entrance. His legs went weak and he staggered back several steps, his face instantly turning worse than a dead man's. Your Highness, this is bad," the estate housekeeper stumbled out, wailing with a sob. A report came from the West Mountain camp. The 500,000 taels of silver and refined steel weaponry we transported through the secret passage last night were all hijacked, a full 20 cartloads of goods. Not even a single hair was left. Tep-heft-hage Xiao Chengchen's blood surged and a sweet taste filled his throat. He actually spat out a huge mouthful of blood right on the spot. That was his final trump card for fighting for the succession, planned for years and exhausting all his savings. Without this money and equipment, he would completely turn into a useless dog with no value left before the third prince. Who was it? Blood dripped from between Xiao Chengchen's fingers, his eyes blood red like a raging wild beast, roaring as he pointed to the sky. "Investigate it for me. Once found, this prince will tear him into 10,000 pieces. 10,000 pieces. However, amidst this overwhelming clamor and panic, inside a low-profile carriage at the street corner, a delicate, slender hand gently pulled down the curtain. I sat inside the warm carriage, leisurely sipping warm Longjing tea, listening to Xiao Chengchen's desperate roars in the distance, a cold and elegant curve curling up at the corner of my lips. Xiao Chengchen, this is only the first cut. Losing wealth, losing your wings, losing the prince's trust. I will make you walk step by step into the bottomless abyss I custom-made for you in pain and despair. The third day of the third month, the Qianqiu Festival Palace Banquet. Inside the Hall of Preserving Harmony, gold and splendor shone brilliantly, with agarwood smoke curling through the air. The current old emperor, Emperor Chenyuan, sat high upon the 9-dragon golden lacquered throne, while below all the officials were seated in order of rank. The music of pipes and strings resonated without end, presenting on the surface a grand picture of peace, prosperity, and nations coming to pay tribute. However, beneath this noisy clinking of wine cups, dark undercurrents were already surging like a raging tide. In the lower seats, Prince Jing Xiao Chengchen, clad in a purple gold python robe, had a face as pale as paper, sunken eye sockets, and exuded a sinister gloom and utter defeat after a fit of rage. In just 3 short days, losing the top-secret equipment of the Shishan encampment and hundreds of thousands of taels of silver, along with facing the crazy humiliation of those 200 corpses of shadow warriors outside his door, he was almost driven completely mad. And next to Xiao Chengchen sat a young man dressed in a 4-clawed golden dragon robe, the current third prince, Xiao Chengming. Xiao Chengming's expression was calm, but the fingers gripping the wine cup turned slightly pale from squeezing too hard. That batch of stolen military funds being hijacked didn't just cut off Xiao Chengchen's retreat, it was also his biggest trump card for taking the throne. "Second, brother, don't be impatient." Xiao Chengming turned his head, lowered his voice, a viper-like viciousness flashing in his eyes. "At today's palace banquet, this king has already used the power of the cabinet. As long as we act according to plan, even if we turn the entire capital city upside down, we must beat that batch of stuff and those 2 beasts to death in one blow." Xiao Chengchen squeezed out a bloodthirsty growl from between his teeth. This king wants that bitch Lin Wanyin and Shen Jie torn into 10,000 pieces. Right at this moment, the eunuch's high-pitched announcement echoed throughout the main hall. The legitimate daughter of the Shangshu manor, Lin Wanyin, entering the hall to pay respects. In an instant, the eyes of all the officials in the hall shot toward the entrance of the main hall in unison. In the center of the main hall, I wore a deep crimson cloud brocade long dress with gold patterns, with a 9-pheasant gold hairpin on my head, standing tall like a pine. Behind me there was not a trace of delicate weakness of a boudoir maiden. Instead, it was replaced by a coldness and nobility forged after taking charge of the main power of the Shangshu manor. I stepped calmly onto the white marble tiles, walked to the center of the main hall, and bowed respectfully. This minister's daughter, Lin Wanyin, kowtows to my emperor. Long live, long live, long live your majesty. On the 9-dragon throne, the old emperor slightly raised his eyes and looked me up and down, a trace of admiration showing in his eyes. Raise your head. I heard that Minister Lin has been feeling unwell recently, and all matters, big and small, in the inner courtyard and in the mansion are fully handled by you. The legitimate daughter, you indeed possess much of the awe-inspiring character of your maternal grandfather, the Grand General of the Pacifying Army back in the day. Your Majesty flatters me. This humble daughter is merely doing her duty to share my father's worries, I answered calmly. Seeing me talking and laughing at ease before the Emperor, Xiao Chengchen and the third prince exchanged a glance, the killing intent in their eyes almost overflowing. Father Emperor, Xiao Chengming, suddenly left his seat and fell heavily to his knees in the center of the hall. This action instantly turned the extraordinarily lively banquet dead silent. The music of pipes and strings abruptly stopped, and the officials looked at each other in astonishment. The old emperor frowned. Third son, today is the grand birthday banquet. Why are you being so impetuous, and what is this for? Xiao Chengming raised his head, his eyes bloodshot, pointing at me with a face full of righteous indignation as he shouted sternly, Father Emperor, your son wishes to report Lin Wanyin, the legitimate daughter of the minister's manor, for colluding with General Shen Jie of Zhenbei, secretly embezzling military funds from the Ministry of War, and stashing a large quantity of forbidden heavy armor in the suburbs of the capital. Even secretly ambushing and killing government soldiers last month with the intent to commit treason. Boom! These words were like dropping a heavy bomb into a calm lake. Embezzling military funds, secretly hoarding heavy armor, plotting rebellion. Every single charge is a capital crime punishable by skinning and pulling tendons, raiding the home and exterminating the clan. The entire court of civil and military officials instantly burst into an uproar. Minister Lin Qingyuan was so terrified his face changed drastically, tumbling off his seat with a thud and scrambling on all fours to kneel on the ground. Your Majesty, see clearly. I am wronged. The minister's residence has absolutely no intention of rebellion. The old emperor's face darkened in an instant, his eyes glaring like a hawk at Shen Ju, who was sitting nearby drinking by himself, as he said in a deep voice, Third son, empty words are no proof. Treason is a grave crime. Do you have evidence? A cruel sneer curled up the corner of Xiao Chengming's mouth, and he said loudly, This son naturally has proof. 3 days ago, a bloody massacre took place in Ghost Sorrow Canyon in the suburbs of the capital, where a full 200 transport soldiers were brutally slaughtered. And after this son sent men to seal off the scene, this item was recovered from deep inside the canyon. With that, Xiao Chengming waved his hand, and 2 brocade guards immediately carried a tray covered with a red cloth up into the main hall. The red cloth was pulled off. It was none other than a suit of fine steel heavy armor gleaming with a cold light, and on the edge of the armor's heart-protecting mirror, the black eagle mark unique to the Northern Suppression Army was carved extremely clearly. At this moment, Xiao Chengchen also immediately stood out, kicking him while he was down with righteous indignation. Father Emperor, I, your son, can testify as well. That night in the back mountain, I caught First Miss Lin meeting in secret with General Shen. Back then, they used searching for assassins as an excuse to cover their tracks. Looking at it now, they were clearly meeting in secret to discuss how to ship this batch of illegally forged heavy armor to the northern frontier to rebel. The 2 of them played off each other, coordinating seamlessly. They turned black into white, pinning the original crime of Xiao Chengqin illegally smuggling black military funds entirely onto Shen Jue and me. The atmosphere inside the hall was suffocating to the extreme. The old emperor's gaze grew colder and colder, an invisible imperial pressure cloaking the entire hall of preserving harmony. Shenju Lin Wanyin, the old emperor's voice was chillingly deep. What do the two of you have to say for yourselves? Faced with this clan wiping frame up, Shenju, sitting in his seat, didn't even raise an eyelid. He just gave a cold snort, his eyes filled with mock amusement like he was watching a show. As for me, I slowly stood up. Not only was I not panicked at all, but I actually let out a light chuckle right in front of the entire court of civil and military officials. "What are you laughing at?" the third prince shouted sternly. "With death right at your door, you still dare mock Father Emperor and the laws of the court. This humble daughter is laughing at Third Highness putting on such a great show." But unfortunately, I turned around and stared coldly at both Xiao Chengming and Xiao Chengchen, my gaze suddenly growing as sharp as a blade. It is just a pity that the Third Highness was too clever for his own good. Taking a fake set of evidence, he dared to recklessly frame a high court official and the minister's manner right before the emperor. Fake evidence, what absolute nonsense. Xiao Chengming laughed out of sheer rage. Who in the world doesn't know that the Black Eagle mark on this armor belongs exclusively to the Jembe army? Marks can be forged in secret, but the iron ore source can't fool anyone. I suddenly raised my voice, ringing like a loud bell, reverberating through the hall. "Your Majesty," facing the Nine-Dragon throne, I held my head high and called out. "The Third Highness keeps claiming that this batch of armor was secretly forged by General Shen. Then this humble daughter would like to ask Your Majesty and the Minister of Works for the refined steel armor of the Great Ming Dynasty. Anything forged with West Mountain purple black iron will show a unique purple gold pattern on the spine after quenching, whereas ordinary civilian iron or inferior iron ore will never show such a phenomenon." Upon hearing this, the Minister of Works hurriedly stepped out of line to report. "Reporting to Your Majesty, every single word eldest Miss Lin said is true. West Mountain purple black iron is a government-controlled mineral vein, and only the Royal Armory and a few specific mines are permitted to mine it." "Good." I stepped right in front of that set of armor, pointed at the tempered layer behind the heart-protecting mirror, and sneered. "Everyone, look, although this suit of armor was illegally engraved with the Black Eagle mark of the Jembe army, its steel pattern gleams with glaring bluish-white spots. This was clearly forged using low-grade iron ore from the northern frontier's Blackstone Mountain mine mixed with scrap copper." Hearing the words Blackstone Mountain mine, Third Prince Xiao Chengming's face instantly turned as pale as paper. Even the high and mighty old emperor had the corner of his brow twitch violently. "Blackstone Mountain mine." The old emperor spoke slowly, his voice as cold as a rock frozen for 1,000 years. "If I recall correctly, isn't that the private property of the Third Prince's maternal clan, the Duke of Zhao's residence?" Boom! The hall erupted into a frenzy once again. "What? The Blackstone Mountain mine belongs to the Duke of Zhao's residence. So that means the ones who illegally forged this batch of heavy armor weren't the Jembe army at all, but the Duke of Zhao's residence, the Third Highness. My God, using low-grade iron from their own illegal mining to forge heavy armor, then engraving it with the Jembe army's mark to frame General Shen. This is a crime punishable by the extermination of 9 generations." Xiao Chengming panicked completely, falling to his knees with a thud in terror and kowtowing repeatedly. "Father Emperor, please see the truth your son didn't know. Your son was also duped by the searching officers." "Duped? How could I possibly give him even a moment to catch his breath?" I pulled a top-secret document stamped with a red seal from my sleeve and held it up high. "Your Majesty, I have another piece of evidence right here. It is precisely the secret correspondence and ledgers covertly intercepted by the Northern Pacification Army in the northern frontier 3 days ago, detailing Duke Zhao's estate smuggling iron ore and illegally manufacturing weapons. Not only does it have Duke Zhao's personal signature on it, but also the signed mark of His Highness Prince Jing Xiao Chengchen, taking a cut of the profits. This batch of weapons was originally contraband secretly forged by the Third Prince and Prince Jing to raise funds for a private army, intended to be sold to rebel tribes in the northern frontier. Yet 3 days ago, General Shen joined forces with top martial experts in the army and intercepted them all in one fell swoop. Seeing that their scheme was exposed and their funding chain broken, The third prince and Prince Jing actually acted out of desperation, staging such a clumsy farce of the villains suing first right here in the main hall. They tried to pin the monstrous crime of smuggling and treason firmly onto the Northern Pacification Army and my minister's estate. I raised the ledger and secret letters high above my head with both hands, dead silence. The entire hall of preserving harmony fell into a deathly silence. Xiao Chengchen collapsed to the ground, his eyes dazed, looking as if his soul had been drained out of him. Xiao Chengming trembled violently all over, his face ashen, unable to utter a single word of defense. In my past life, they used fake evidence to send the Lin family to hell. And in this life, I will use the shackles forged by their own hands to nail them completely to the heart-wrenching pillar of shame. The old emperor looked at the secret letter and account book presented to him, his face darkening with every page he turned. Until he finished reading the last page, the old emperor suddenly slammed the account book hard right onto Xiao Chengming's face. Smack! Beasts! You two bastard beasts! The old emperor stood up roaring, his bloodshot eyes filled with despair and fury, to fight for succession, illegally mining iron, illegally forging weapons, colluding with foreign enemies, even framing meritorious officials and setting up loyal ministers at my grand birthday banquet. Your Majesty, appease your wrath. The officials all fell to their knees in unison, trembling in fear. Pass down my decree. The old emperor took a deep breath and sternly issued his cold judgment. Third Prince Xiao Chengming, for misconduct in the imperial presence and colluding with illegal mines, is hereby stripped of all administrative power starting today, to be handed over to the imperial clan court under strict guard. Without my decree, he shall never step half a foot out of his residence for eternity. Prince Jing Xiao Chengchen, for heeding slander and participating in illegal trafficking, is stripped of all military power and royal guards, docked 3 years' salary, and shall return to his mansion to reflect on his faults behind closed doors. The brocade guards shall thoroughly investigate all properties under his name. The Duke of Zhao Manor illegally mined iron ore and colluded with the rebel forces. The entire clan is to be taken into custody and jailed, to be jointly tried by the Ministry of Justice and General Shen Zhu of Zhenbei. If there is any resistance, execute them on the spot. With these 3 punishments handed down, the factions of Xiao Chengchen and the Third Prince were completely uprooted. Father Emperor, spare my life. Xiao Chengming screamed as he was dragged out by the brocade guards like a dead dog. Xiao Chengchen, his face pale as death, expressed his gratitude, and as he passed by me, he glared at me with an extremely venomous look, gritting his teeth and saying, "Lin Wanyin, you are ruthless. You are truly ruthless." I turned my head slightly, leaning close to his ear, and spoke a sentence crisp and clear in a voice that only the 2 of us could hear. "Xiao Chengchen, don't be in such a hurry. The Royal Autumn Hunt 3 months from now is the imperial tomb this young lady has chosen for you." Xiao Chengchen shuddered, and for the first time an absolute fear of death surfaced in his eyes. After dealing with the 2 of them, the old emperor turned to look at me and Shen Zhu, his expression softening a bit. Lin Wanyin remained calm in the face of danger and has rendered service by exposing the traitors. She is rewarded with 1,000 taels of gold and a scarlet cloak. Minister Lin Qingyuan has raised his daughter well and is awarded the title of Grand Guardian of the Crown Prince. Shen Zhu has rendered service in the investigation. The 30,000 northern suppression troops in the northern frontier are permitted to be fully equipped with fine steel armor, and the Ministry of War must not delay. This humble daughter, this general thanks your Majesty for your immense grace. Shen Zhu and I bowed down together, under the complex gazes of the officials in the hall. I slowly stood up. The lights of the palace banquet stretched my shadow out very long. The 2 heavyweights in the imperial court became complete invalids on this night. And on the chessboard in my hands, only the final endgame remains. The Royal Autumn Hunt 3 months later will be the final moment when all hatred is paid back in blood. October, Black Wind Valley in the enclosure. The sky was high and clouds were light. The autumn wind was like a blade. On the Julong Mountain Royal Hunting Grounds, stretching for hundreds of miles, banners blotted out the sun, and the sound of horns shook the sky. The Imperial Court's annual autumn hunt ceremony kicked off right here. However, deep in the bustling and cheering hunting grounds, Black Wind Valley was completely shrouded in a thick fog that had lingered for years, dead silent to the point of causing panic. At the entrance of the valley, dozens of crows perched on dry tree branches, making harsh, raspy caws, clop, clop, clop. A series of crisp and steady horse hooves pierced through the thick fog, dressed in a dashing black and gold hunting outfit, a long sword at my waist, a heavy wood bow on my back, and riding a pure black thoroughbred steed. I calmly ventured alone into the very core of Black Wind Valley. Deep in the fog, not far from me, the ground suddenly began to tremble violently. Rumble, violent hoofbeats surged madly from all directions like muffled thunder, flanking me from every side. In just a few breaths, over 100 death warriors clad in heavy armor, wearing black veils, and wielding sharp blades charged out from the thick fog, completely locking down all my escape routes. And at the center, surrounded by death warriors, Xiao Chengchen rode forward slowly on a blood-red warhorse. He had long shed his former disguise as a suave and charming prince. His hair was messy, his eyes were bloodshot with crimson, and his face was twisted like a fierce devil crawling out of hell. Lin Wanyin, you bitch, you really dared to enter Black Wind Valley alone. Xiao Chengchen's voice was raspy like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. Dripping with bone-deep malice, you ruined 3 years of my hard work. You stripped me of my military command. You turned me into a useless cripple in front of Imperial Father. Today, in this Black Wind Valley, I am going to skin you alive, rip out your tendons, and chop you into 10,000 pieces. Sitting on horseback, I didn't even draw the longsword at my waist. I merely glanced sideways at him, a cold, mocking smirk curling up the corner of my mouth. Xiao Chengchen, do you really think these last 500 death warriors you hid in the secret passage of the West Mountain Camp can actually save your life? Xiao Chengchen burst into wild laughter, the sound echoing through the valley, endlessly shrill and gruesome. Ha ha ha, save my life. I didn't plan on leaving here alive today at all. The third prince was deposed. I was demoted, and in a few days that old bastard Imperial Father is going to reduce me to a commoner and banish me to the border. Since he won't give me a way out, today I'll take these 500 death warriors, kill you first, and then go to the hunting grounds to commit regicide and take the throne. Those who submit to me shall prosper. Those who oppose me shall perish. Xiao Chengchen abruptly drew the sword at his waist and roared madly. Charge, kill him. Chop off her head to serve as this king's wine cup. Kill. Over 100 death warriors raised their long sabers like a tide, charging at me frantically to kill, facing this overwhelming killing intent. There was no panic in my eyes, only an endless expanse of dead silence and icy cold. Regicide with just a rabble like yours, I sneered, my right hand abruptly reaching for the signal flare beside the saddle and yanking it fiercely. Whoosh, boom. A brilliantly dazzling red flare shot up into the sky, exploding loudly above Black Wind Valley. Almost at the exact same second, the signal flare exploded. General Shen dropped the gates, set the fire. I raised my head and shouted sharply, rumble. Above the 100 jang cliffs on both sides of Black Wind Valley, countless boulders and rolling logs soaked in fire oil rained down overwhelmingly like a meteor shower. At the entrance of the valley, dozens of Thousand Jin Road blocking stone gates crashed down with a deafening roar, completely locking down the entrance of Black Wind Valley. Ah, fire, there is fire. Rolling rocks, we've been tricked, we're ambushed. The moment the rolling logs hit the ground, they ignited on contact. Sky-raging flames accompanied by a pungent smell of sulfur instantly exploded across the valley, turning into a boundless sea of fire that devoured everything. Countless Death Squad warriors didn't even make it to me before being smashed into meat paste by falling rocks and burned to ashes by the blazes. Screams and the sizzling of searing flesh intertwined in the valley, forming a living hell. This is impossible. Xiao Chengchen turned pale with shock, his wild fury instantly replaced by icy fear. Only I know the route through Black Wind Valley. How could you possibly have set an ambush of rolling stones and fire oil here in advance? Xiao Chengchen, did you forget who led you here? A rough, booming voice exploded from above the cliff. General Shen Jie of Zhenbei stood at the edge of the precipice holding a heavy spear backed by an elite force of 3,000 marksmen of the Zhenbei army. Miss Lin got her hands on your troop deployment map for Black Wind Valley 3 days ago. Tonight, this place is your execution block, Xiaochen. Shenju waved his hand, his voice like thunder. Archers, fire a volley of 10,000 arrows. Leave none alive. Swish, 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 swish. Heavy armor-piercing arrows rained down across the sky, pinning the surviving Death Squad warriors to the scorched earth in swathes. In the field, only Xiao Chengchen was left, covered in burns with disheveled hair. Looking at the corpses everywhere in the sea of fire, he completely broke down. Staring dead at me on horseback, he raised his sword like a madman and charged to stab me. Lin Wanyin, I'll fight you to the death. Fight, as if you are worthy. My eyes turned cold, and my body leaped off the horse like a swallow. Doing an elegant flip in the air, I landed steadily right in front of Xiao Chengchen. Draw sword. Clang. A crisp ringing of the sword echoed through the cold sky. My longsword sliced a stunning arc through the air, so fast that only an afterimage was left. Crack spurt. The precious sword in Xiao Chengchen's hand was chopped off by my single strike. In the next second, the blade drew a splash of glaring blood, fiercely piercing right through his right shoulder and pinning him dead onto the charred boulder behind him. Ah, ah, ah. Xiao Chengchen let out a shrill and agonizing howl as blood gushing from his shoulder stained the stone wall red. Holding the sword hilt, I closed in on him step by step, looking down at this devil who had tortured me to death in my past life. Xiao Chengchen, do you still remember this scent? I reached into my robe, pulled out an exquisite white jade medicine vial, and pulled off the stopper right in front of him. A pungent, chilling scent of medicine wafted away with the wind. Xiao Chengchen's face was as pale as paper, his pupils shrinking violently. Thursday this. This is Jianji powder, a banned drug of the court. How do you have this? In my past life, he used this bottle of Jianji powder when I was paralyzed on the bed in the cold palace, pinching my chin and pouring it down my throat drop by drop, watching me die in despair amidst endless convulsions and excruciating pain. This bottle of medicine. I leaned close to his ear, my voice as gentle as a whisper between lovers, yet carrying a hair-raising chill. Is the poison I brewed for you through 2 whole lifetimes? And no, don't, Wanyin. Xiao Chengchen was completely scared out of his wits, snot and tears flowing down mixed with blood, bitterly begging Wanyin. It was all that bitch Liu sowing discord. It was all the third prince forcing me. Spare me. As long as you get me out of here, I'll make you Princess Jing. I swear I'll only love you for the rest of my life. Love me. The ice in my eyes didn't recede even a bit, the corners of my mouth curving into a cruel sneer. Xiao Chengchen, your love really makes me sick. Before my words even settled, I abruptly pulled out my longsword and stomped heavily onto his chest with the momentum. Crack. His sternum shattered. At the same time, I raised my left hand, my grip like an iron clasp, dead gripping Xiao Chengchen's chin and forcing his mouth open. Poured that entire bottle of Jianji powder mercilessly right down his throat. Gulp, PFF. Cough, cough, cough. Xiao Chengchen coughed violently as the liquid medicine slid down his esophagus. A few seconds later, the poison erupted violently. Ah, my stomach, ah! Xiao Chengchen slid down from the stone wall, rolling and writhing on the ground in agony like an extremely contorted mangy dog. His muscles and bones began to spasm inch by inch. Dense beads of blood oozed from under his skin, and his internal organs felt as though they were being torn apart by thousands of iron hooks. This extreme agony will last for 3 full days and nights, until his entire body festers into rotten flesh and he dies. Standing amidst the sea of fire and pool of blood, I coldly watched Xiao Chengchen, disfigured beyond recognition on the ground and wailing for death. The last trace of obsession and resentment in my heart finally dissipated into thin air at this moment. A blood feud from my past life reclaimed today with a single sword stroke. Boom! The stone gate at the valley entrance was pushed open by the joined strength of the Jembe army. Shenju strode into the valley, stepping across the scorched earth to reach my side. He glanced at Xiao Chengchen on the ground, who was unable to die despite begging for it, and then at me, overflowing with murderous aura yet breathtakingly beautiful, his eyes filled with reverence and shock. Eldest Miss Lin, Shen Jie cupped his hands and said in a deep voice, "The ambush at Black Wind Valley completely wiped out 500 rebels. The evidence of Xiao Chengchen's treason is ironclad. His Majesty, the Emperor's Imperial Guards, have already reached the valley entrance." I slowly sheathed my sword, letting the soaring firelight reflect across my cheeks. I turned around, faced the royal hunting cavalry riding head-on from the valley entrance, and held my head high. The dark night has passed, the bloodshed washed clean. From this moment on, no one can ever control my destiny again. I, Lin Wanyin, am the only order in this capital city. The 15th of October, the Royal Palace. Although the soaring flames of Black Wind Valley have been extinguished, the air inside the palace was frozen as if poured with molten lead. Inside the main hall, dragon incense curled in the air. The old emperor sat high upon the dragon throne, his face ashen, his eyes glaring intently at the two people standing side by side in the middle of the hall, General Shenju of Zhenbei, and Lin Wanyin, the legitimate daughter of the minister's manor. Outside the hall, a full 30,000 heavy iron cavalry of the Zhenbei army, clad in refined steel heavy armor and holding 18-foot-long spears, had surrounded the entire palace so tightly that not even water could seep through. The clashing of iron armor and the pungent smell of blood seeped in through the door cracks, making all the civil and military officials tremble in fear, with not a single person daring to look up directly. Good. What a fine Zhenbei army. What a fine Lin Wanyin. The old emperor slammed the table and rose abruptly, his voice screeching high and out of pitch from extreme anger and panic. Xiao Changqian committed treason, and you merit praise for quelling the rebellion. But this imperial palace is sacred ground. How can your army of 30,000 be allowed to surround it? Shenju Lin Wanyin. Stepping into my hall with weapons in hand, are you trying to copy that beast, Xiao Changqian? Committing treason and usurping the throne, facing the son of heaven's wrath, the officials of the whole court were so frightened that they fell to their knees one after another, kowtowing repeatedly. Only Shenju and I stood proud and upright. I slowly raised my eyes, my cool gaze looking straight at this high and mighty great Ming sovereign, the corner of my mouth curving into a calm, unhurried smile. Calm your anger, your majesty. General Shen and I risked our lives to suppress the rebellion, and were late to protect you. How can there be any talk of usurping the throne? Presumptuous! The old emperor pointed at the heavy troops outside and snapped sharply. Then how do you explain the 30,000 heavy cavalry out there? These 30,000 heavy cavalry are not meant to threaten your majesty. I took a step forward, slowly pulled a thick, gold-lacquered memorial from my sleeve and presented it with both hands. This is the strategy for pacifying the realm that I prepared for your majesty. Please inspect it, your majesty. The old emperor frowned tightly, his eyes filled with vigilance and suspicion. Trembling with fear, the head eunuch took the memorial and handed it to the old emperor. The old emperor snorted coldly and yanked open the memorial. However, with just a single look, the color drained completely from his face in an instant, and his entire body trembled violently. That was no ordinary memorial at all. Densely recorded on it were transfer deeds covering a full 17 provinces of the great Ming dynasty salt fields, iron mines, granaries, and underground bank contracts across the realm. And at the very bottom of every single deed, my Lin Wanyin's personal seal was conspicuously stamped. You. The old emperor's eyes almost bulged out of their sockets, his teeth chattering. 70% of the salt, iron, and grain routes across the entire realm are actually all under your control. I looked at him quietly, my voice calm, yet each word falling like a heavy hammer. Your Majesty, the second prince and third prince have fallen, the imperial court is in turmoil, and the borderlands are in crisis. The current national treasury has long been squandered clean by those two traitors, leaving behind nothing but an empty shell. Without the wealth and grain in my hands, next month, the 300,000 troops of the northern frontier will run out of rations. The common folk across the 36 prefectures of the realm will rise up in rebellion because they cannot buy salt. At this point I paused slightly, the cold glint in my eyes suddenly blazing bright. If I wanted to usurp the throne, the one sitting on the dragon throne right now would no longer be your majesty. Standing here today, I merely want to ask your majesty for a guarantee, one that brings peace to the realm and secures eternal peace for the minister's manor and the Jembe army. Inside the hall, there was dead silence. The old emperor slumped on the dragon throne, looking as if he had aged 10 years in a single instant. He finally understood. This boudoir maiden of barely 18 before him controlled far more than just a mere minister's manor. Using 2 years to plot in secret, she had long since gripped the economic and military lifelines of the entire Ming dynasty firmly in her hands alone. Kill her, and the whole realm would instantly plunge into a destructive abyss of running out of grain and salt, with the armies completely routed. Put her in high office. In the imperial court, there would no longer be any room for imperial autocracy. The old emperor closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, the anger in his eyes had completely turned into despair and compromise. Lin Wanyin, what do you want? Speak. I bowed elegantly, speaking every word with resolute clarity. First, my father Lin Qingyuan is upright in character and capable in governance. I ask your majesty to issue an imperial decree today promoting my father to Grand Secretary of Wenyuan Hall and Senior Grand Secretary of the realm, leading all officials. Second, General Shen Jie of the North has rendered great service in suppressing the rebellion. Grant him the title of Duke of State Defender, hereditary in perpetuity, with supreme command over all military forces nationwide. Third, I suddenly raised my head, my phoenix eyes radiating overwhelming majesty. I, Lin Wanyin, ask your majesty to bestow upon me the title of Regent Commandery Princess Mingdi. Establish the Bureau of Regency, to be managed by me personally to strike foolish monarchs above who act unjustly, and slay treacherous ministers and rebels below. Seeing the Commandery Princess shall be like seeing the Emperor. As soon as these words came out, all the civil and military officials present gasped. Princess Regent. Establish the Regent office. Seeing the princess is like seeing the Emperor. How is this a reward? This is clearly taking the supreme ruling power legitimately into her pocket without changing the dynasty. The old emperor's face was deathly pale, his hand gripping the armrest of the dragon throne tightly. After a long time, he finally hung his head in despair. Granted. We, your servants, kowtow to Princess Regent Mingde. Long live the princess. Led by Shen Ju, the civil and military officials of the entire court knelt on the ground in unison, their loud shouts echoing throughout the hall of preserving harmony. Soaring straight into the clouds, standing above all the officials, looking down at the subjugated land and emperor at my feet, all the grievances, despair, and unwillingness from my past life in my heart completely vanished into thin air. 3 years later, capital city atop the city tower, the setting sun was blood red, dyeing thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in magnificent golden red. Dressed in a bright red regent flying fish robe and wearing a black cloak trimmed with gold thread, I stood leaning against the railing. A gentle breeze blew past, rustling my hair and revealing a pair of wise and calm phoenix eyes. In these 3 years, the Shangshu Manor became the top aristocratic family under heaven, and father brought political harmony and popular content in his position as chief grand secretary. Xiao Chengchen and the third prince had long turned into withered grass on tomb mounds amidst despair, and the State Oversight Bureau I established cleaned up officialdom, purged corrupt officials, and brought an era of peace and prosperity to the great Ming dynasty. Behind me came the sound of steady, powerful footsteps. Shen Ju, dressed in a black python robe, tall and broad-shouldered, walked slowly to my side in the glow of the setting sun. He didn't bow his head in awe like the others did. Instead, he took off his heavy cloak completely naturally and gently draped it over my shoulders. The wind is strong at night, yet you don't even mind the cold, Lady Overseer. Shen Ju raised his eyebrows, a touch of tenderness and teasing meant just for me in his tone. I turned my head to look at him, a comfortable smile touching the corners of my mouth. Great General Shen, shouldn't you be reviewing Ministry of War documents at the Privy Council today? How come you have time to run up to this city tower to catch the wind? How could documents look as good as you? Shen Ju leaned casually against the railing, standing shoulder to shoulder with me. turning his head to look deeply at my profile. Everyone in the world fears you, the decisive and ruthless regent princess, saying you are a female Asura who fell into the mortal world. But I know that without you, this mortal realm wouldn't have the peace of these thousands of lit homes. I followed his gaze and looked down from the wall. On the bustling streets of the capital city, carriages and horses flowed like water. The air buzzed with voices, and countless commoners had smiles of living and working in peace on their faces. In my past life, I died on a cold night of heavy snowfall. My whole family executed, dying with unredressed grievances. In this life, stepping on the blood and ashes of my enemies. I hold all living beings and destiny firmly in my own hands, Shenju. I spoke, my voice crisp as a chin. This land is beautiful. I reached out my hand, facing the glow of the setting sun, and slowly clenched it. But what is even more beautiful is from now on, it belongs to you and me. Shenju laughed softly, his eyes bursting with incomparable heat and deep affection. He stretched out his broad, warm palm, tightly wrapping around my slender jade hand, through mountains of daggers or seas of flames. From the netherworld to the highest heavens, this general will rule it together with you. Atop the city tower, the two stood side by side, their cloaks fluttering loudly in the wild wind. The setting sun faded away, leaving a sky full of stars. The era of Lin Wanyan's strong female lead has only just begun. All right, the story is over. I know that right now, among those of you in front of the screen, some are immersed in the thrill of the strong female lead reaching the top, while others are sneering, is that it? Isn't it just a story of cheat code revenge? Yeah, you are all right. But what is truly valuable isn't that result, but that process. As a veteran spring craftsman who gambles with human nature and payoff points every day, let me break down the underlying logic of this story for you. Don't just enjoy the thrill, learn to see the inner workings. Why is suppression so important? A lot of novice authors write revenge by having the protagonist strike back right away. That is called throwing a tantrum, not a game of strategy. True spring-like storytelling has one core, creating a potential energy gap of despair. Look at Lin Wanyan. In the 30% length covering her past life, what did I make her lose? Not money, not power, but dignity, and the right to keep living. This is a person's most fundamental core value. When her life is compressed to the absolute limit, every breath she takes is building up force for the future rebound. Remember, don't have the protagonist slap back right after getting slapped once. That is too cheap. Let her get slapped 10 times, kneeling on the ground, with everyone thinking she is dead, and then let her stand back up and use a knife to slice all the tendons in their hands and feet. This is the ultimate secret of the Spring 2. Why is a dimensionality reduction strike so satisfying? Where does the satisfaction come from? It comes from information asymmetry and rule restructuring. Why was Lin Wanyan able to win? Because she possessed the complete dataset from her past life. This isn't luck. This is the core of a dimensionality reduction strike using rules the opponent can't even comprehend to crush the trump card they are proudest of. Xiao Chengchen thought he was playing the game of princes fighting for the throne, but Lin Wanyan outright flipped the table and told him, "Sorry, I am playing the infinite game of controlling the global economic lifeline." When your enemies are still squabbling over the gains and losses of a single city or piece of land, you've already bought out the entire chessboard. This is the aesthetics of a dimensionality strike 3. Why don't I write about love? Because for a top-tier hunter of this level, love is a weak asset with extremely mismatched costs and returns. What is Shenju? He is the sharpest blade in Lin Wanyan's hand, the strategic investor bound to the core asset of the Zhenbei army. Between them, it is value alignment and intertwined interests. This isn't love. This is tacit understanding between top partners. What I write is cool aesthetics, not sweet romance novels. Truly strong people won't spend their time on you love me, I love you sugary sweetness. Their energy is used to set rules, integrate resources, and eliminate rivals. To summarize, the true value of this piece is not something that can be summed up by just the word thrilling. It is a practical operation manual on how to start from scratch and reverse short the entire corrupt system. Now, after enjoying the thrill and finishing learning, don't rush off. If you are addicted to this cool, precise, logically rigorous narrative style, and if you also want to become that top player in real life who stuffs springs into their opponent's coffin, follow me, Maggie Liu. In the next issue, I will completely dissect another story pattern: how to complete a perfect reverse harvest with the lowest cost in a desperate situation. Remember, in this world, it is always the people who make the rules who get the last laugh. I am your strategic observer. See you next time.